is my hope that all kingdoms will become one, united under one God.
One king.
If all men can agree, yes. The birth of a single kingdom called England has to begin here.
I'm Uhtred of Bebenba, and I shall take what is mine! Bebenba is mine!
Hello all the fans of the Last Kingdom Netflix series and you strategic board game enthusiasts. I'm Adam, aka Weekly Game Night, and I'm taking you today to the age of the fierce battles between Danes and Saxons, age of leaders and heroes, age when what's known as today's England was born. You're gonna plot, lie and fight to earn yourself a righteous spot on the throne. That is, of course, if gods favor you. In the end, as Uhtred is saying, destiny is all. Thanks to the courtesy of publisher Gamelyn Games, I'm doing preview of The Last Kingdom. Please keep in mind that in this video I'm using prototype that I have received from the jolly team of Gamelyn Games, and nothing here is final. And as you can see, not tiny anymore, it's a full-scale strategic board game that definitely can be epic. That game was designed by John DeClaire, known for Death Reckoning, Cubitos, The Edge of Darkness or Mystic Vale, and so many other board games. But this one is completely different animal, and I'm so eager to tell you how did the author do. That game is soon launching on Kickstarter, and you can find the link to the campaign in the description of this video below. In this video, we're gonna dive into the gameplay basics, I will show you all the game components, and finally, I will tell you how do I feel about the game after a week of heavy playtesting. So are you ready? Let's see then what The Last Kingdom is all about. Action approach, the game author decided that the players will choose only their leader, and much like in the Netflix series, they will weave between the two warring sides, Danes and Saxons, showing allegiance to one of them, but also changing that allegiance when they see fit. In the game, you will find a plethora of cards and actions that will influence the game board and allow you to move, add or remove armies, place and move heroes, and there is a good dose of useful trick cards that can give you action or victory points boost, change your affinity, or even move the conflict to another region. Plenty of ways to surprise your opponents. This game introduces the idea of allegiance. Each player will take part in each of the 5 conflicts per round, and the victory points will be received depending if you are on the winning side or not. As I mentioned, there are 2 major sides of conflict, Danes and Saxons, with the Saxons divided into 3 different kingdoms, Wessex, Mercia and Northumbria. How many victory points you will receive? Well, that depends on how many armies and heroes from the winning side there are and your affinity, which works like a points multiplier. The higher the affinity to each of the kingdoms, the more victory points you will get. Oh, and through the course of the game, you will change your allegiance a lot. To start the game, you're gonna choose your leader, prepare the game board and get the starting action points. There are only 2 rounds in the game and each of them starts with the draft. Players will draft 4 cards and add 2 leader cards to create their starting hand for that round. Each of the rounds consists of 5 conflicts, 1 for each region, and all the players will participate in every single conflict there is. After the draft is finished, players will start the first conflict by playing their action cards and use action market that introduces sliding action mechanic. You can simply pay for the action with your action points and slide the used action flag to the rightmost position. With the cards and action plaques, you will manipulate the game board by creating, moving and destroying armies. You can also place or move heroes, and some cards allow for combat tricks, adding affinity or changing your allegiance. Once all the players are done with their actions, it's time to resolve the conflict. Winning side is the one with higher strength, and only the players loyal to that side will score victory points. The number of victory points is based on the armies and heroes left on the winning side and the position on the affinity track, which works much like a points multiplier. Remember that you can change your allegiance to surprise your old or new allies and change the course of the conflict. But if you lost, no worries, there is a nice catch-up mechanism that will yield the action points to all the losing players. Once the conflict is finished, the conflict token is moved to the next region, and so the game goes until all the conflicts are resolved for the current round. Before the second round, you will draft stronger cards, and after all the conflicts are resolved in that round, the game is finished and the winner is chosen based on the victory points. If you are lucky to score the most points, congratulations! You become the new ruler of England. And if you want more in-depth look into the gameplay basics and the game components, I did the other video you might be interested in that you can see on the screen right now. Now that you know what The Last Kingdom is about, let me share some of my impressions. Boy, a lot to unload here, so where do I even start? So let's start with the basics. I took this game for a week-long holidays and we played it a couple of times, testing each of the leaders and heroes. With that being said, we played with 3 players, but there are special rules for 2 players, something worth keeping in mind as my preview is based on 3 players' experience. The Last Kingdom is based on the iconic Netflix series, but can you really feel it? Well, definitely, my lords. Of course, Gamelyn used the images from the TV series, perhaps even too much of them, but that would be too easy, even though some of the images are really well chosen. And if you know the series, you will see the connection between the image and how the card works, for example. But to recreate the spirit of the series, you need to focus on other key elements. Leaders. Each of leaders' skills is thoughtfully chosen and go very well with the theme of the series. For example, Edelwald's Dane's affinity is the same as his lowest Saxon affinity, and he conveniently gets action points when he is in the conflict region, while good Viking Guthrum multiplies the strength of Dane's armies, but can change his allegiance when things go south. That takes us to the key game mechanics, allegiance. In the game, you might be loyal to Saxons or Danes, but much like in the movie, for most of the leaders, it's just a matter of time before they switch their allegiance to make the most out of the current situation. And you will switch allegiance a lot, often surprising your temporary ally in a good or bad way. Finally, when you play this game, you can feel the spirit of Netflix series by watching how the board changes, showing constant conflicts between Danes and Saxons. And this is pretty awesome. So the whole concept for this game is very neat. You are not playing as a faction, instead there are 2 sides, Saxons and Danes, and throughout the game, much like in the movie, you will switch your allegiance hoping for the best outcome, the best for you, that is, of course. Every ally is temporary and situation changes frequently. You got to love it. You can say that in a large scale, this game shows that conflict between the faction, but tells the story of single leaders trying to become the ruler in these turbulent times. And this is how I felt playing The Last Kingdom. Really well done. To me, the best feature of this game is the elegant rule set. Not too easy, not too hard, no glitches, pure gameplay. It simply works well. You can really feel that author did a lot of work when it comes to the cards and market actions. Basically, the cards that you're gonna use in conflicts are of 2 types. primary action and secondary action cards. Primary action cards will finish your turn, and you can see that the decision which cards or actions are primary or secondary was a conscious one, and it doesn't allow you for too powerful combos. But as befits a good card-based game, you can definitely pull out sweet combos, and engines fans will also be satisfied, as you can even create simple engines with the cards you play, your leader and your heroes. And that takes us to draft and cards strength. Draft itself is, draft. So one of my favorite board game mechanics, by the way, but because the leaders have different skills, some cards are stronger in one game, while practically useless in other games. And that makes each draft a bit different, which is good, by the way. This game is about negative interaction at all times, but you don't feel that someone is doing something against particular player or you. It's rather thinking how to make the most out of the situation you are in. Definitely not all versus one all the way in this one. And also, every alliance is temporary, so watch your back. While we are talking about the conflicts, each of them counts. The more I played this game, the more I felt that, much like in, for example, Blood Rage, it's about choosing which conflict is worth active participation and which to pass early. And as there are only 10 conflicts in the game, you know when the game will end. So you better choose how and when you use your actions and cards wisely. And talking about the conflicts, there is a nice catch-up mechanism introduced in this game. So if you lose the conflict, then you will receive some action points that will help you in the upcoming encounters. Combined with the invasion, you can get plenty of action points. On the other hand, if you win conflict fighting one versus all, then you get additional victory points, lose alone, and you get more action points. Not bad at all. Another thing that I really loved about the game are the cards and the action market. And I love the plethora of possibilities that they create, and sometimes it will take a bit for a single player to really think about his actions, as you have to think in short term while resolving the current conflict, and in long term about the entire game round. More or less, you start each of the game rounds with 6 cards and couple of action points. Through the cards and heroes abilities, you can, for example, get more action points, and with the more action points, you basically extend the number of actions you can take and to influence the game board more. And the actions, oh boy, there is so many ways you can influence the game board, move heroes and leaders, create, move or remove armies, change your allegiance or affinity, or even change the region of the conflict. I really love it, so many ways to backstab your friends. Also worth mentioning is the affinity track. In the game, you can and you will change your allegiance a lot, but as your affinity is basically your victory points multiplier, you're gonna get the victory points for winning the battles, you really have to think hard on how and with whom increase your affinity, as it's impossible to be high on all affinity tracks. It's a really cool mechanics and the most important way to outscore your friends. But it's not all about the good stuff, so let's talk about the leaders' balance. When we played, we used all of them, and easily you could see that some of the leaders are more powerful than the others. So for example, what do we have here? Mighty King Alfred and brothers Friedrich and Eric. 2 versus 1, you might think, error. While we found Alfred overpowered, those two friendly, bloodthirsty brothers don't stand a chance in the game versus more powerful heroes. Also, in some of the games, I found that leaders you choose might affect the gameplay, so that it forces other players to choose particular allegiance or affinity. Not necessarily a bad thing, but leaders' balance is something that should be adjusted before the final version of this game is produced. Talking about the leaders, if you also take the draft into account, there won't be 2 the same games. Because each of the game creates different environment in which some of the cards are more playable and some are less, and in the process the whole gaming experience is different. Let's focus on the looks and the clarity now. The game itself looks really good, but definitely could be better if, for example, the map would look more antique-like. Subjectively, I would use less movie images, but that's just me. The iconography on the cards, on the other hand, is superb. After some time, you don't need really to read the cards, but you simply look at them and know how they work. And what about the miniatures? I love two things about them. First, the quality and the looks. This is definitely spot on. And some of the miniatures can be played as leaders and heroes. So for example, if you are not using Ragnar as a leader in the game, then you will place his hero card in the deck for drafting and use his skills. Very neat idea that probably will be explored more in the Kickstarter campaign, I suppose, as not all of the heroes are playable as leaders. But there is one thing I don't like when it comes to the miniatures. For the time being, you only use ring, this kind of ring, to show the miniature allegiance, but when you are briefly looking at the game, there is no way to tell which miniature belongs to who, and it needs to be addressed in the final edition of the game. Not that it was super problematic, but just it took some time to recognize which miniature belongs to whom. I could continue talking about the game, which I really liked, but I think that this is enough. You probably get the picture by now, and this video would be too long. So overall, The Last Kingdom is a great board game on its own and a great adaptation of the Netflix series that all fans should be interested in, because Gamelyn and the game author did a great job with translating the original franchise into a board game, not by using images, that would be too easy, but by recreating ever-changing nature of allegiance and thus keeping the true spirit of The Last Kingdom alive. Sure, there are some flaws that needs to be addressed, but for a prototype, it's a great promise of future classic. And I can't wait to see the stretch goals and possible expansions that will further enhance the gameplay experience. Well, I think that's it. If you like what you see, go ahead and check this game on Kickstarter. You will find the link in the description of this video. I think I'm done, so thanks for watching, your legends, and remember that destiny is all.